the results you expected. Debug mode is also useful in this case to diagnose these logic errors. You can manually set a place in code where the execution will halt, called a breakpoint. This is done by clicking to the left of the line of code of interest. Then, when you run the application in debug mode, it will halt on that line, so you can examine all of the variables and find the area of your code that is not working as expected. The program is still in memory, it's just frozen at this point. In this break mode, you can step line by line through the application by using the Step Into or Step Over features. Step Into offers a more thorough analysis of the code because it digs into any methods that are called from here, whereas Step Over will skip these called methods. A great way to examine the contents of various properties and values is called visualizers. If we hover our mouse over the highlighted area of code, we can see all the information that is held inside a color object. There are several other useful debugging windows. The Locals window shows you all the variables local to the currently executing method. The Watch window is good for adding any variables or properties and examining them in more detail. The Immediate window is like a scratchpad where you can perform quick calculations, print out values, and execute commands. To stop debugging so that we can edit again, we can select Stop Debugging from the Debug menu. To add more files to your project, from the Project menu, select Add New Item. This will bring up the Add New Item dialog box. There are a lot of different templates here you can choose from, with descriptions at the bottom explaining each one. Let's just add another Windows form. We see that Form 2 has been added to our project. We can connect Form 1 and Form 2 together. First, let's add another button to our Form 1. And let's set the button text to tell the user what will happen when you click on it. Now we need to actually hook these up in code. Let's double-click this button to go to the code view and insert the following. Now if we run our program and click on the Show Form 2 button, hopefully our second form will get displayed. There we go. All right. Now let's take a look at the properties of our desktop window project. We can do this by double-clicking on the Properties folder in the Solution Explorer. We can see that the properties of our project are divided into categories, which are listed on these tabs to the left. Some of the things you can do here are to define custom user or application settings, or even set up your application to be published on the internet. In this application section, let's set up a custom icon for our application. Let's maximize this window so we can see what we're doing here. An icon is simply a 16 by 16 or 32 by 32 bitmap with a .ico file extension. Some sample icons are available to you for free as part of your Express registration benefits. Let's browse to a sample icon. I'm going to select the MSN butterfly icon here. Let's go ahead and build the solution. And navigate to our desktop window project. Sure enough, we see this icon has now been added to our executable file. You can customize your development environment by selecting configuration options found in the Tools, Options window. Here you can specify things like window layout, font styles, keyboard shortcuts, and more. To see all the configuration options available to you, click the Show All Settings checkbox here at the bottom. I can add line numbers to my code editor view under Text Editor, C# by selecting the Line Numbers checkbox. You can also do things like set fonts and colors. Let's go ahead and change the font for our code editor and the color, and click OK. Many applications become useful when they can store information, and one of the best ways to store information is in a database. This way, the data can be organized just the way you need. In this demonstration, we will create a connection to an existing sample database from Microsoft called Northwind using SQL Server Compact Edition. We'll start by getting a connection to a database. From the Data menu, select Show Data Sources. The Data Sources window will be displayed. We can move windows around simply by dragging and dropping. Let's go ahead and move this Data Sources tab to the right-hand side section of our window. We see that there are no data sources yet established, so we can select Add New Data Source. This brings up the Data Source Configuration wizard. We see that we can connect to several different data sources, including a web service or an object. In this case, we'll connect to a database file on this local computer. Click Next. Once we pick the database source, we need to configure a data connection, so we'll click New Connection. We see that the default database type is SQL Server Compact Edition, but you could also pick another database type, such as Access or SQL Server Express. Let's go ahead and keep the default for now. Now let's browse for our Northwind database file. Go ahead and select northwind.sdf and click Open. You can select Test Connection to make sure that this is set up properly. Great. Now just click OK and click Next. You are prompted to copy this data file into your project. And let's give it a name, Northwind Connection String. Click Next. Now we can see all of the tables listed in this Northwind database. Let's select the Employees table and give it a more descriptive name. Instead of Northwind, let's call this Employees dataset, and click Finish. We can see our new data connection in this Data Sources window. Let's configure our Form 2 to show this data in our Employees table. Simply drag and drop the entire Employees table from the Data Sources window onto your form. This creates a data grid view control, as well as this neat little strip of buttons at the top called a binding navigator. There is also code written automatically for us to give these controls life. Let's go ahead and resize our form and our data grid view control. So there's nothing else we have to do in order to work with our data. It's almost too easy. So let's run the application and see how it functions. Now when we click Show Form 2, it shows the data grid with all the rows of information from our Employees table. Notice that these buttons will also allow you to add, delete, and save new information to and from your table. Another way to access data is through a technology called LINQ. LINQ stands for Language Integrated Query, which allows you to model data constructs and work with data directly in your code. For example, you could write something like this to pull out employee last names. If you're new to data storage concepts, that may not mean much, but basically it gives you easier accessibility to your data and more flexibility in working with your data directly in your program. Unfortunately, we don't have time to cover Link in more detail here, but if you're planning on creating an application that makes use of databases or XML data files, I encourage you to explore this method of data access. There are many resources and tutorials on the web that will help you understand and use Link in your Windows applications. So now that we've covered some of the main features of VisualCSharp 2008 Express, inevitably, when you're creating your own projects, you'll have some questions about how to achieve certain functionality. Visual Studio offers excellent help features to help answer those questions. From the Help menu, you can search for certain topics or use the How Do I feature to find out about specific tasks. Also, when you're programming, if you want to learn about a specific method, property, or keyword, you can just select the term in the code editor and press the F1 key on the keyboard. This dialog asks us if we would like to use online help as our primary help source. I would recommend this option, since you'll be able to get the latest help articles. Another great place to learn more about programming is the Beginner Developer Learning Center. You can find a link to this website from the ExpressEdition's main page. Here you'll find all sorts of free tutorials and lessons to increase your programming knowledge. You can pick from Windows or web development tracks and choose from Tier 1 through 3 difficulty levels. There's also a how-to reference library if you just want a quick refresher on a certain topic. And the Kids Corner section contains lessons specifically for kids. If you run into a problem and need to ask a question, you can do that in the Express forums. You can find links to the forums and other resources on the Start page. We hope you've had fun with this quick introduction about how to start using the Microsoft VisualCSharp 2008 Express Edition. You're now ready to fire up the code editor and start cranking out some cool Windows applications.